When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa on June 22, 1941, it marked the beginning of the largest land invasion in history. Over 3 million German and Axis soldiers crossed into the Soviet Union along a front stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. The early stages of the campaign exposed a critical imbalance between the two armies, not only in tactics and logistics, but also in precision infantry skills. Among these, marksmanship and the specialized role of the sniper were about to assume an importance neither side had fully anticipated. The German Wehrmacht entered the Soviet Union confident in its combined arms strategy, rapid armored thrusts supported by mobile infantry and tactical air power. Infantry marksmanship was competent, but sniping was not a major emphasis in the pre-Barbarossa German military structure. The German army had designated sharpshooters, called Scharfschützen, usually one per infantry squad. But they were not organized into specialized units. They operated with standard-issue rifles fitted with telescopic sights, and their role was limited to targeting officers or key positions during advances. The Wehrmacht's focus remained on speed and maneuver, not prolonged positional warfare that favored snipers. In contrast, the Red Army had entered the war with some experience in sniper training, dating back to the 1930s. After the Russian Civil War, Soviet military planners had recognized the value of accurate rifle fire. The Soviet Union had promoted civilian marksmanship through the OSOAVIAKHIM, Society for the Promotion of Defense, Aviation, and Chemical Construction, a paramilitary organization that trained millions of citizens in shooting. Many recruits who entered the Red Army in 1941 already possessed basic shooting skills from these programs. However, the Red Army had suffered devastating purges in the late 1930s under Stalin, which had eliminated much of its experienced leadership. At the time of the German invasion, the Soviet sniper system existed in theory, but not in coherent practice. The catastrophic early months of Barbarossa changed that. German advances destroyed entire Soviet formations, encircling and capturing millions of Red Army soldiers. By the end of 1941, the Wehrmacht had reached the outskirts of Moscow. The immense losses forced the Soviets to adapt every possible defensive measure. It was during this crisis that sniper warfare became a strategic necessity for the Red Army. Urban and forested terrains on the Eastern Front provided ideal environments for snipers. As Soviet troops retreated and reorganized, they began deploying trained marksmen to slow German advances and inflict disproportionate losses. A single skilled sniper could disrupt German movement, lower morale, and eliminate officers or machine gun crews without the need for large-scale artillery support. Soviet commanders quickly recognized this cost-effective value. The Soviet sniper doctrine that developed in late 1941 emphasized concealment, patience, and independent operation. Snipers worked in two-man teams, a shooter and an observer, with the latter responsible for spotting and covering the shooter's retreat. They operated from hidden positions, in trees, trenches, or rubble. The most common weapon was the Mosin-Nagant M91/30 rifle, fitted with a PU 3.5x scope, offering rugged reliability and effective range in harsh conditions. Soviet training stressed discipline over volume of fire. Each bullet was to count. The Soviet High Command, the Stavka, formalized sniper programs in 1942. Sniper schools were established at the front and in rear areas. Instructors like Major General Morozov at the Central Women's Sniper Training School helped train hundreds of marksmen and women. Female snipers, including Lyudmila Pavlichenko, became famous for their efficiency, and their achievements were publicized to boost morale. Soviet military publications and newspapers like Krasnaya Zvezda began to highlight sniper successes, transforming them into propaganda symbols of resistance. The Germans initially underestimated this growing Soviet sniper capability. Early reports from Army Group Center and Army Group South in late 1941 described increasing losses from invisible shooters. German infantry units, trained for mobile warfare, found themselves pinned down by well-concealed Soviet snipers who exploited every piece of terrain. Forests, barns, church towers, and even destroyed vehicles. As the front stabilized during the winter of 1941 to 1942, these isolated engagements evolved into systematic duels between opposing marksmen. By 1942, both sides were refining counter-sniper tactics. The Germans began designating more soldiers as dedicated sharpshooters and issued them Karabiner 98K rifles with high-quality Zeiss ZF-42 or ZF-39 scopes. These rifles offered excellent accuracy, and German optics were among the best in the world. Yet, the sheer scale of the Eastern Front and the decentralized nature of the fighting meant that Soviet snipers often dictated the tempo of engagements. The tactical situation shifted dramatically with the launch of Operation Blue in the summer of 1942. Germany's southern offensive aimed at capturing the oil fields of the Caucasus and the industrial city of Stalingrad. The campaign's progression turned the Volga River city into one of the most fiercely contested battlegrounds in history. It was here that the sniper war reached its brutal peak. When the fighting reached Stalingrad in August 1942, the city was transformed into a landscape of ruins. Continuous air raids and artillery strikes had reduced its factories, apartment blocks, and streets to rubble. Traditional maneuver warfare was no longer possible. The battle devolved into a struggle for every building, stairwell, and room. A form of close-quarters combat, later described by soldiers as Rattenkrieg, rat war. In such terrain, visibility was limited, cover was abundant, and the line between offensive and defensive blurred completely. Snipers found this environment ideal. The 62nd Army, commanded by General Vasily Zaitsev, defended the city's western bank. Zaitsev recognized early that snipers could play a decisive role in offsetting German superiority in armor and artillery. He ordered the creation of dedicated sniper groups, each assigned to specific sectors of the front. Their primary objectives were to target German officers, radio operators, and machine gun crews, elements crucial for the coordination of infantry attacks. Snipers such as Vasily Zaitsev, Anatoly Chekhov, and Nikolai Ilyin began accumulating impressive confirmed kill counts. Zaitsev, who arrived in Stalingrad in September 1942 with the 284th Rifle Division, quickly distinguished himself by eliminating German soldiers across the devastated industrial areas, particularly around the Volga embankment and the Red October factory. He also trained new snipers, emphasizing stealth, observation, and patience. The conditions of Stalingrad amplified the snipers' effectiveness. Rubble piles, destroyed walls, and half-collapsed buildings created numerous firing positions. Snipers could move through sewer lines, conceal themselves behind burnt vehicles, or use holes in walls to cover multiple firing lanes. Both sides used mannequins or helmets mounted on sticks to deceive their opponents and identify enemy firing positions. German units also deployed skilled snipers in response, often from elite formations such as the Wehrmacht's Jaeger battalions or the 24th Panzer Division. They operated in small teams, seeking out Soviet marksmen to eliminate them. These confrontations turned into duels where movement, timing, and deception determined survival. The destroyed city offered almost endless opportunities for such deadly contests. Reports from the Stalingrad front during October and November 1942 indicated that sniper warfare had become institutionalized. Soviet commanders issued daily tallies of enemy personnel killed by snipers. The 62nd Army's political department used these figures for morale campaigns, emphasizing how individual soldiers could make a measurable impact. Soviet military archives record that in some sectors, sniper fire accounted for nearly 1/3 of German infantry casualties. The German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, faced growing frustration. Every attempt to advance met not only with machine gun fire and artillery, but also with precise shots from concealed Soviet marksmen. German counter-sniper tactics involved using artillery or grenades to destroy suspected nests, but the density of the ruins made this ineffective. Soviet snipers often relocated after each shot, making detection nearly impossible. By late 1942, the sniper war within Stalingrad had become both a tactical and psychological battle. Each shot carried an outsized effect on morale. German reports describe the unnerving silence followed by sudden losses of officers or sentries. Soviet propaganda capitalized on these successes, publishing stories of hero snipers and emphasizing their role as defenders of the motherland. The combination of environmental conditions, urban destruction, and strategic necessity created the perfect setting for sniper warfare to evolve into a defining feature of the Eastern Front. Before Stalingrad, snipers had been important. After Stalingrad, they became essential. The tactics, training, and psychological emphasis developed during these months would shape the conduct of infantry combat for the remainder of the war. The birth of the sniper war between 1941 and 1942 was not a single event, but a gradual transformation driven by survival and adaptation. The chaos of Barbarossa forced the Soviet Union to institutionalize sniping. The siege of Stalingrad perfected it. In the shattered factories and burned-out ruins along the Volga, both the Red Army and the Wehrmacht discovered that a single well-placed bullet could achieve what artillery bombardments often could not: paralyze an entire enemy unit. By the winter of 1942, snipers were no longer auxiliary soldiers. They had become strategic assets, symbols of endurance, and instruments of precision in a war increasingly defined by attrition. The confrontation in Stalingrad would demonstrate this evolution in its most intense form, establishing sniper warfare as one of the defining features of the Eastern Front. Vasily Grigorievich Zaitsev became one of the most recognized Soviet snipers of the Second World War, due to his performance during the Battle of Stalingrad in 1942 to 1943. His actions represented the practical application of Soviet sniper doctrine under extreme urban combat conditions. Zaitsev's methods, his confirmed kills, and his organization of a sniper training program within the city illustrate how the Red Army adapted sniping into a systematic and highly effective part of its defensive operations. Zaitsev was born on March 23, 1915, in Yeleninskoye, in the Ural region of the Soviet Union. Before the war, he worked as a clerk for the Soviet Navy's Pacific Fleet in Vladivostok. His upbringing in a rural hunting environment gave him early familiarity with firearms. He was known for accuracy with a standard hunting rifle before ever entering combat. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Zaitsev requested transfer from the Navy to a front-line combat unit. His request was approved in 1942, and he was assigned to the 1047th Rifle Regiment of the 284th Rifle Division, part of the 62nd Army defending Stalingrad under General Vasily Chuikov. Zaitsev arrived in Stalingrad in late September 1942, at a time when the city's defense had reached a critical stage. The German Sixth Army controlled most of the city's western districts, and the Soviets held narrow bridgeheads along the Volga River. Every day, troops and supplies crossed the river under artillery and air attack. Upon arrival, Zaitsev served initially as a simple rifleman. His first sniper actions began spontaneously. Using a captured German rifle with a scope, he eliminated several enemy soldiers across the riverbank. His superiors immediately recognized his skill and reassigned him to designated sniper duties. Within days, Zaitsev began accumulating confirmed kills. Soviet records indicate that between October 10th and December 17th, 1942, he killed 225 enemy soldiers and officers, including 11 enemy snipers. His total count by the end of the Battle of Stalingrad reportedly exceeded 242 confirmed kills, though some later accounts attribute up to 400. The documented number remains the official figure cited by Soviet military historians. Zaitsev's effectiveness derived from his strict adherence to sniper principles that combine discipline, concealment, and calculated patience. He operated primarily in small teams, often paired with a spotter or another sniper. The 62nd Army Command encouraged these teams to function autonomously, choosing positions and targets according to tactical necessity. Zaitsev's preferred weapon was the Mosin Nagant M91/30 rifle, equipped with a Pu 3.5 times telescopic sight. The rifle was simple but reliable, with an effective range exceeding 800 meters. Zaitsev personally adjusted the sighting on his rifle for zero error at his preferred engagement distance. One of Zaitsev's earliest successful engagements occurred near the so-called Kravtsov House sector, a multi-story building overlooking a key street crossing. German forces attempted to use the upper floors for observation and fire control. Zaitsev and his team positioned themselves in the building's lower level, camouflaging their location with debris and destroyed furniture. Over 2 days, they eliminated more than a dozen German soldiers who approached the area. This incident reinforced the principle of concealment through integration with the ruins, a tactic that became standard among Stalingrad snipers. Camouflage and deception were essential to survival. Zaitsev and his students adopted a variety of concealment techniques suited to the urban environment. They used broken bricks, sandbags, and burnt metal sheets to blend into their surroundings. Sniper positions were chosen not only for visibility of targets, but also for the ability to withdraw undetected. Many positions had multiple firing points, allowing lateral movement after a shot. Zaitsev also applied the technique known as the false nest, placing decoys such as helmets or mannequins to draw enemy sniper fire and reveal their positions. Once the enemy fired, the actual sniper could identify the flash or movement of the German shooter and neutralize him. Because the front line in Stalingrad shifted by meters rather than kilometers, snipers operated in extreme proximity to enemy forces. Engagements often occurred within 100 to 200 meters, requiring quick reflexes and exact knowledge of the terrain. Zaitsev mapped his assigned sectors meticulously, marking windows, wall openings, and ruins that could serve as potential enemy positions. He often relocated multiple times per day to maintain unpredictability. The 62nd Army recognized the value of his achievements and ordered Zaitsev to establish a sniper training program to multiply the effect of his expertise. This program, informally known as the Zaitsev Sniper School, operated directly within Stalingrad under combat conditions. It was not a formal institution, but a front-line instructional system where experienced snipers mentored new recruits. Training emphasized observation, concealment, and discipline. Recruits learned to detect enemy movements through minute details, such as flashes of light, disturbed dust, or reflections from optics. They were trained to avoid unnecessary shots and to coordinate with nearby infantry units. Zaitsev enforced a strict rule that no sniper was to reveal his position with hasty or repeated firing. Patience was regarded as a weapon equal to the rifle itself. In addition to individual marksmanship, Zaitsev's school introduced sniper pair operations. Each team consisted of a shooter and a spotter who alternated roles. The observer used binoculars to monitor targets and surroundings, allowing the shooter to remain focused solely on the shot. This cooperative system improved efficiency and survivability. It also mirrored Soviet infantry doctrine emphasizing collective action over individual heroics. Zaitsev's training program produced several notable snipers, including Anatoly Chekhov, Vladimir Pchelintsev, and Nikolai Kulikov, each of whom went on to score dozens of confirmed kills. Reports from the 62nd Army's political department credit Zaitsev's school with training over 30 new snipers during the battle. Each of these trainees subsequently trained others, creating a self-replicating system that expanded throughout the Stalingrad front. The impact of these snipers extended beyond direct casualties. German soldiers were forced to alter movement patterns, avoid open exposure, and commit increasing resources to counter sniper measures. German officers had to restrict daylight reconnaissance, while machine gun crews frequently changed positions. The slowing of German advance in key sectors owed much to the cumulative disruption caused by sniper activity. Soviet sniper doctrine during this period evolved rapidly. Field manuals and political orders incorporated lessons learned from Stalingrad. The key principles emphasized camouflage and adaptation to terrain, using debris, snow, and ruins for concealment. Decentralized command allowed snipers to operate semi-independently while maintaining communication with infantry units. Psychological impact was recognized as a critical factor, since the unseen presence of snipers demoralized enemy troops. Propaganda also played a central role, promoting successful snipers as examples of Soviet skill and morale. Zaitsev's actions became central to the Red Army's propaganda effort. Reports of his confirmed kills were published in Krasnaya Zvezda, Red Star, and local army bulletins. He was cited for destroying key German personnel, including officers and machine gun operators, which contributed to his portrayal as a model defender. On December 22, 1942, Zaitsev was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, the nation's highest honor. He also received the Order of Lenin and the Medal for the Defense of Stalingrad. Although propaganda exaggerated certain aspects of his story, the operational records from the 62nd Army confirmed the essential facts of his contributions. Reports from his regiment document the increasing efficiency of Soviet sniper groups from October to December 1942, correlating directly with the period when Zaitsev was active both as a combatant and instructor. Zaitsev's tactical notes from this time, later compiled into post-war publications, described his preference for establishing multiple firing points per position, remaining motionless for extended periods, changing position only under darkness or smoke cover, identifying high-value targets such as officers, artillery observers, and machine gun crews, and using natural shadows and destroyed structures for optical concealment. He also emphasized maintaining communication with supporting infantry through prearranged visual or sound signals. These notes influenced later Soviet sniper manuals and continued to serve as instructional material in post-war training. The urban terrain of Stalingrad also dictated adaptations unique to that environment. Snipers used the multi-level structures of factories and apartment blocks to cover intersecting fire zones. In industrial areas like the Red October, Barracuda, and Tractor Factory, observation posts were built from collapsed steel beams and concrete fragments. Zaitsev's teams exploited these vantage points to dominate narrow streets and choke points. They also coordinated with machine gun squads to set ambushes, using sniper fire to lure German units into pre-sighted kill zones. The Soviet command incorporated sniper performance into daily operational reports. The headquarters of the 62nd Army maintained records of sniper kills, with confirmation requiring observation by a fellow soldier or officer. While numbers were sometimes inflated for morale purposes, the systematic recording process indicates the institutional significance attached to sniping during the battle. By the winter of 1942 to 1943, Zaitsev's sniper school had transformed frontline marksmanship from an improvised survival tactic into a structured component of the Red Army's defensive operations. His example demonstrated that an individual or small group could exert measurable influence on the battlefield, even in the context of large-scale mechanized warfare. The combination of technical skill, training methods, and integration with regular infantry tactics made the Stalingrad snipers an essential element of Soviet success in maintaining their defensive perimeter. Zaitsev's leadership, both as a shooter and instructor, turned scattered acts of marksmanship into an organized campaign of attrition against German infantry. In official Soviet accounts compiled after the war, Zaitsev was credited with training enough snipers to collectively eliminate over 3,000 enemy soldiers during the remaining months of the Stalingrad battle. While such totals are difficult to verify independently, there is consistent archival evidence that sniper operations significantly reduced the combat effectiveness of German infantry battalions operating in the central and northern sectors of the city. Zaitsev's record at Stalingrad stood as a model of Red Army precision warfare. His integration of sniper doctrine with direct battlefield command instruction marked a turning point in Soviet infantry tactics. By combining methodical training, strict discipline, and adaptation to the urban environment, he and his school institutionalized a new standard of sniper efficiency that endured through the remainder of the war. The alleged sniper duel between Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev and a German sniper officer, identified as Major Erwin König, remains one of the most discussed and controversial stories to emerge from the Battle of Stalingrad. According to Soviet wartime accounts, the event took place over 3 days in late November 1942 amid the ruins of the city, representing one of the deadliest individual contests of the war. However, decades of research into German and Soviet archives have produced conflicting evidence about whether the duel actually occurred. The narrative's origins, its possible embellishment by Soviet propaganda, and the absence of verifiable German documentation have made it difficult for historians to confirm the event as fact. Nevertheless, the story of Zaitsev and König reflects the intense sniper warfare that characterized Stalingrad and the broader Eastern Front. The first mention of the duel appeared in Soviet reports in late 1942 and early 1943, shortly after the encirclement of the German Sixth Army. The official version was published in Soviet newspapers such as Krasnaya Zvezda, describing how Zaitsev, already a celebrated sniper with hundreds of confirmed kills, was challenged by a highly skilled German sniper sent specifically to eliminate him. The German was reportedly identified as Major Erwin König, the head of a sniper school in Berlin. According to these accounts, König had been dispatched to Stalingrad to counter the growing effectiveness of Soviet snipers who were inflicting significant losses on German infantry and officers. The story claimed that König's presence was intended to restore German sniper morale, which had been shaken by Zaitsev's success and the Soviet emphasis on sniper training. In the Soviet version, the duel took place in the industrial district of Stalingrad, possibly near the metallurgical plant or the ruins of the Lazar chemical factory. Over 3 days, both snipers maneuvered among rubble, wreckage, and crumbling buildings, each attempting to locate the other through deception and observation. According to Zaitsev's post-war memoir, Notes of a Sniper, he eventually identified König's hiding position by noticing a reflection from the enemy's optics through a small piece of metal. He then used a decoy helmet to draw König's fire, located the position precisely, and killed the German sniper with a single shot. After confirming the kill, Soviet troops reportedly recovered König's body and found identification papers that revealed his name and rank. The story quickly gained prominence in Soviet media, reinforcing Zaitsev's image as a national hero. It was later incorporated into wartime documentaries and post-war Soviet literature as an example of Red Army skill, patience, and discipline. The duel was presented as symbolic of the broader conflict between the German and Soviet armies. The professional precision of German forces versus the determination and resourcefulness of Soviet soldiers. During the war, this narrative served both morale and propaganda purposes, aligning with Soviet efforts to create national heroes during a period of extreme hardship and destruction. However, the historical verification of the duel has remained problematic. There are no known German military records confirming the existence of a Major Erwin König or any officer of similar name being deployed to Stalingrad. German personnel files and Wehrmacht sniper school rosters examined after the war have not revealed any reference to König, nor to an officer traveling from a sniper school in Berlin to the Stalingrad sector. Researchers in Germany, including military historians such as Joachim Engelmann and Rolf Michaelis, have pointed out that German sniper instruction was decentralized, and it is unlikely that an officer would have been detached from a training command in the midst of such a critical frontline operation. Some Soviet sources have alternatively named the German sniper as Major Heinz Thorwald, suggesting that his identity may have been mistranslated or distorted through wartime reporting. However, similar to König, no verifiable documentation exists for a Major Thorwald being present in Stalingrad. Post-war German records from the Sixth Army's surviving documents, recovered from the encirclement, make no mention of an officer duel of this nature. This absence has led some historians to argue that the story was an invention of Soviet propaganda, or at least a dramatized account based on smaller-scale sniper engagements that did occur. The Soviet Union had strong incentives to promote such narratives. During the Battle of Stalingrad, propaganda played an essential role in maintaining morale both on the front lines and in the home front. Newspapers and radio broadcasts emphasized individual acts of heroism that could symbolize Soviet resistance against superior German firepower. Zaitsev's real achievements were already significant. By the end of 1942, his confirmed kills exceeded 200, and he had established one of the first sniper training schools within a frontline combat zone. The addition of a duel against a German master sniper served to elevate his achievements to legendary status. The account was published widely by Soviet correspondents such as Vasily Grossman, whose reporting from Stalingrad helped shape the wartime image of Soviet heroism. In later years, historians attempted to verify the event through interviews and archival research. British author Anthony Beevor, in his detailed study, Stalingrad, 1998, noted that there is no documentary evidence of König or the duel outside of Soviet sources. He suggested that while Zaitsev's skill and impact were undeniable, the story of König may have been a constructed legend to boost morale during and after the battle. German military historian Thomas Urban also analyzed the mythic nature of the duel, suggesting that the absence of German confirmation, combined with the consistency of Soviet narrative patterns, indicates that the story functioned primarily as propaganda rather than a documented combat encounter. Zaitsev himself maintained the story's authenticity until his death. In multiple interviews and his memoirs, he described the duel as a real event and provided consistent details about the setting, duration, and tactics used. He emphasized that the German sniper's death was confirmed by his spotter, and that the documents found on the body proved his identity. However, these documents were never publicly displayed, and no official Soviet archive entry or photographic record of the event has been verified. Soviet intelligence and NKVD files from the Stalingrad front, which recorded officer engagements and battlefield recoveries, contain no mention of a captured or killed officer named König or Thorwald. Despite the lack of archival proof, the story continued to circulate through post-war Soviet literature and cinema. In the 1960s and 1970s, Soviet films and military publications retold the duel as historical fact, reinforcing Zaitsev's status as an exemplary sniper. Western historians encountered the story primarily through these Soviet narratives, which were later referenced in popular culture. The 2001 film Enemy at the Gates dramatized the duel extensively, introducing it to global audiences. Though the film incorporated fictionalized elements that departed significantly from Zaitsev's actual memoirs. Some Russian military researchers have argued that the duel, even if not literally true in every detail, may have been inspired by multiple real engagements between Zaitsev's sniper group and German sharpshooters. German snipers were active in the Stalingrad sector, particularly around the Red October and WWII factories, where they inflicted heavy casualties on Soviet troops attempting to cross exposed ground. It is possible that Zaitsev's duel narrative represented a symbolic condensation of several smaller sniper encounters into one dramatized event. Soviet field reports confirm that sniper versus sniper engagements occurred daily in Stalingrad, and the psychological impact of these duels was significant. German and Soviet troops alike viewed snipers as both highly skilled hunters and deadly threats, whose elimination carried moral and tactical importance. The debate over the König duel illustrates the challenges of distinguishing verified events from wartime myth-making. While the Soviet narrative framed the duel as a precise and documented event, modern historiography places it within the broader context of wartime propaganda and morale-building efforts. The Soviet Union's emphasis on individual heroism, combined with Zaitsev's genuine record and charisma, made the story believable and effective. It also reflected the larger theme of Soviet victory through discipline, patience, and skill, qualities that propaganda sought to attribute to all Red Army soldiers. In the absence of definitive German records or physical evidence, most modern historians treat the König duel as a wartime legend rooted in real sniper combat, but embellished by Soviet media. Nevertheless, the story has remained influential in shaping the historical memory of Stalingrad. It contributed to the cultural image of the sniper as a decisive, almost duelist figure within modern warfare. Regardless of its factual accuracy, the legend of Zaitsev's duel has become inseparable from the narrative of Stalingrad and the evolution of sniper tactics on the Eastern Front. The discussion surrounding this event underscores how wartime storytelling often blended authentic combat experiences with constructed symbolism. Whether or not Major Erwin König existed, the story of the duel reflects the broader reality of Stalingrad's sniper warfare. An environment where individuals fought in isolation, where observation and precision determined survival, and where psychological warfare was as crucial as marksmanship. The duel remains one of the most analyzed and debated sniper stories in military history, illustrating how the boundaries between history, memory, and propaganda often overlap in the study of the Second World War. As the Eastern Front expanded between 1942 and 1944, sniper warfare evolved from isolated duels into an organized and strategically integrated element of both Soviet and German military doctrine. The Red Army's early emphasis on marksmanship, combined with combat experience from Stalingrad, laid the groundwork for large-scale sniper operations across multiple fronts. The German Wehrmacht, recognizing the effectiveness of Soviet snipers, began developing specialized counter-sniper units and formal training programs. The result was a sustained, systematic contest between two of the most capable sniper traditions in modern warfare, spanning key battlefields from Leningrad to Kursk and beyond. By early 1943, the Soviet Union had institutionalized sniper training throughout its frontline armies. The Red Army established sniper schools attached to major fronts and armies, using experienced marksmen as instructors. Training programs were designed to produce shooters capable of independent action, with emphasis on patience, camouflage, and coordination with infantry units. The Stalingrad experience had demonstrated that snipers could inflict disproportionate casualties on German troops and officers, disrupt enemy movements, and undermine morale. The Soviet General Staff directed that each rifle regiment should include at least 24 trained snipers, supported by spotters and reconnaissance elements. The Soviet use of women in sniper roles also expanded during this period, with female sharpshooters achieving notable records in accuracy and endurance. In contrast, the Wehrmacht's sniper doctrine was initially decentralized. German infantry divisions had relied on designated marksmen, Scharfschützen, rather than full-time snipers. However, the high casualties inflicted by Soviet sharpshooters during the winter campaigns of 1942 to 1943 forced the German command to revise its approach. The Wehrmacht established formal sniper schools in places such as Vilnius and the Zossen training area near Berlin. These institutions emphasized precision shooting with the Karabiner 98K rifle fitted with Zeiss or Ajax telescopic sights. German snipers were taught to operate in pairs, often using camouflage suits and well-prepared positions. Despite these developments, the German sniper program never achieved the same numerical scale as its Soviet counterpart, largely due to resource constraints and the shifting strategic situation after 1943. The siege of Leningrad became one of the key arenas of sniper warfare. The static nature of the front, with German and Soviet forces entrenched across the Neva River and the city's southern suburbs, created ideal conditions for sustained sniper activity. Soviet snipers in Leningrad established observation posts in factory chimneys, church towers, and apartment ruins, engaging targets across narrow streets and open terrain. Records from the Leningrad front indicate that between September 1941 and January 1944, over 3,000 Soviet snipers operated in the area, collectively credited with more than 11,000 confirmed kills. Among them were highly effective shooters such as Maria Polivanova, Tatiana Kosterina, and Mikhail Surkov. Surkov, a veteran sniper from Siberia, was credited with over 700 confirmed kills in the Leningrad sector, making him one of the most lethal snipers of the war. The Germans responded by deploying counter-sniper detachments equipped with optical devices and sound-ranging equipment. Wehrmacht snipers sought to neutralize Soviet positions through coordinated fire, but Soviet shooters often changed positions frequently and used decoys such as dummy heads or helmets to expose enemy fire. The duel-like nature of these engagements made sniper work among the most psychologically demanding tasks on the front. Reports from both sides described snipers spending days or even weeks hunting specific opponents across small sections of terrain, reflecting the precision and endurance required in urban and semi-urban combat. Another major sniper campaign unfolded during the siege of Sevastopol in 1942, and again during the Soviet offensive of 1944. In Sevastopol, the mountainous terrain and fortified positions created unique challenges for snipers on both sides. The Germans used trained snipers from mountain and naval infantry units, who were skilled at long-range shooting across rocky terrain. Soviet snipers, operating from concealed caves, trenches, and pillboxes, adapted to the terrain by coordinating with artillery observers to identify and eliminate enemy officers and machine gun crews. When the Red Army retook Sevastopol in May 1944, sniper detachments played a key role in securing the high ground overlooking German positions. The Soviet command noted that in the final offensive, sniper units destroyed over 4,000 German soldiers and officers in the sector, emphasizing their role as a supplementary but decisive arm of infantry operations. The Battle of Kursk, in July 1943, represented a shift in the function of snipers within large-scale, mobile warfare. Unlike Stalingrad or Leningrad, Kursk involved fluid mechanized engagements across open steppe terrain. While tanks and artillery dominated the battle, snipers remained vital in disrupting enemy reconnaissance patrols, neutralizing forward observers and targeting crew members during lulls in armored combat. Soviet sniper detachments at Kursk were integrated into defensive belts, where they were tasked with covering anti-tank gun crews and forward infantry trenches. Reports from the Voronezh and Central Fronts recorded sniper teams eliminating over 8,000 enemy soldiers during the defensive phase alone. The Germans also employed experienced marksmen from elite divisions such as the Großdeutschland and Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler units, who used long-range optics to suppress Soviet positions. In some sectors, Soviet snipers used captured German rifles and optics, preferring them for their superior glass clarity and mechanical precision. By mid-1943, both armies had adapted their sniper tactics to the evolving battlefield conditions. Soviet doctrine increasingly emphasized coordination between snipers and reconnaissance elements. Small, mobile sniper groups operated ahead of infantry formations, identifying enemy strongpoints and reporting movements. The use of camouflage evolved beyond personal concealment. Soviet units employed camouflage nets, decoys, and artificial vegetation to mask entire firing sectors. German snipers also refined their use of camouflage, employing reversible smocks and snow-patterned suits for winter operations. They adopted techniques such as firing from beneath rubble, shooting through pre-drilled holes in walls, and setting traps for advancing infantry. Psychological warfare played a significant role in these sniper duels. Both sides produced propaganda highlighting the prowess of their marksmen. German publications featured snipers like Matthias Hetzenauer of the 3rd Mountain Division, who later recorded over 340 confirmed kills. On the Soviet side, newspapers publicized the exploits of Lyudmila Pavlichenko, Rosa Shanina, and Fedor Oklopkov. Pavlichenko, who fought in Odessa and Sevastopol before being evacuated due to wounds, became one of the most famous snipers of the war, with 309 confirmed kills. Her success demonstrated the high standards of Soviet sniper training and the integration of women into specialized combat roles. By 1944, sniper operations had become institutionalized in the Red Army structure. Each front maintained a sniper reserve, and sniper schools operated near rear echelons to train replacements. The Soviet Army's Central Women's Sniper Training School, established in 1942, produced over 1,000 female snipers by the war's end. These snipers were assigned to rifle divisions, operating in pairs with spotters and often maintaining kill records verified by officers. The discipline, accuracy, and concealment taught in these programs contributed to the Red Army's overall improvement in battlefield marksmanship. German forces, by comparison, faced increasing logistical constraints that limited the number of trained snipers available. The loss of experienced soldiers and the attrition of veteran NCOs reduced the quality of German sniper operations as the war progressed. The retreat of the Wehrmacht through Ukraine and Belarus in 1944 further exposed the vulnerability of withdrawing forces to Soviet sniper harassment. As German units retreated, Soviet snipers infiltrated behind them, cutting off stragglers, targeting engineers, and disrupting communication lines. In cities like Kharkov and Minsk, Soviet reports describe sniper units operating independently for days, eliminating officers and machine gun teams. The precision and psychological pressure exerted by snipers contributed to the overall breakdown of German defensive organization. German counter-sniper tactics became increasingly desperate, relying on artillery bombardments and smoke screens to suppress suspected sniper positions rather than individual hunts. Technologically, the sniper war reflected the limitations and innovations of both armies. The Soviet Mosin-Nagant M91/30 rifle equipped with the PU scope remained the standard weapon, valued for its ruggedness and simplicity. German snipers primarily used the Karabiner 98Ka with ZF-39 optics, though some elite units employed semi-automatic G43 rifles with ZF-4 scopes for higher firing rates. Optical quality favored the Germans, but Soviet snipers compensated through tactical patience and experience gained in urban conditions. The exchange of captured rifles was common, with each side adopting useful modifications from the other. In tactical terms, sniper warfare on the Eastern Front was not limited to individual duels, but functioned as part of coordinated infantry tactics. Snipers were often deployed in conjunction with machine gun nests and mortar teams, ensuring overlapping fields of fire. The Soviets refined this into what they called sniper groups, typically consisting of 8 to 10 shooters assigned specific sectors. These groups worked under a commander who coordinated targets and timing. The Germans, facing increasing Soviet numbers, used snipers primarily for defensive delay actions, targeting advancing officers and radio operators to slow assaults. By the end of 1944, the cumulative experience of sniper warfare had shaped the combat doctrines of both sides. The Red Army's emphasis on marksmanship became institutionalized in post-war Soviet military training, while the German Army's lessons informed later NATO sniper programs. Sniper warfare had evolved from an individual skill into a systematic component of operational planning. The duels fought in the ruins of Leningrad, the hills of Sevastopol, and the fields of Kursk demonstrated that precision shooting could influence not just individual battles, but the broader rhythm of war on the Eastern Front. The Eastern Front's sniper war from 1942 to 1944 represented one of the most intensive periods of sustained precision combat in modern military history. It was defined by tactical innovation, adaptation to terrain, and the merging of individual skill with organized military structure. The Red Army's commitment to sniper warfare gave it a consistent advantage in inflicting attrition and maintaining morale, while the Wehrmacht's countermeasures reflected the growing strain on its forces as the tide of war turned decisively against Germany. The story of the alleged sniper duel between Vasily Zaitsev and the German officer, identified as Major Erwin König, became one of the most enduring legends of the Second World War. Regardless of its factual accuracy, the account was instrumental in shaping both wartime and post-war narratives about Soviet heroism, resilience, and the psychological dimensions of the Battle of Stalingrad. Over time, it evolved from a tactical anecdote into a key element of Soviet cultural memory and an international symbol of sniper warfare. The historical debate surrounding the duel has continued into the modern era, reflecting broader discussions about the use of propaganda, the construction of wartime myth, and the evolution of military doctrine influenced by sniper operations in urban combat. The Soviet Union first presented the Zaitsev duel as an officially sanctioned account during the final stages of the Battle of Stalingrad in late 1942. The event was publicized through Krasnaya Zvezda, the Red Army's official newspaper, and circulated by war correspondents, including Vasily Grossman. Soviet wartime reporting portrayed Zaitsev as the embodiment of the disciplined, intelligent, and determined Red Army soldier who could defeat a technically superior enemy through skill and perseverance. The dual narrative, emphasizing a direct confrontation between Zaitsev and a German master sniper, sent specifically to eliminate him, served as an ideal propaganda tool. It provided a clear, individualized representation of the broader Soviet-German struggle and framed Stalingrad as not only a military engagement, but also a moral contest. The timing of the story's publication was significant. The duel reportedly occurred in late November 1942, during a phase of the battle when Soviet troops were consolidating their positions after launching Operation Uranus, the counteroffensive that encircled the German Sixth Army. Soviet leadership sought to reinforce morale among frontline soldiers and the civilian population by highlighting examples of tactical superiority and individual valor. The account of Zaitsev's duel with König was widely distributed to military units as part of the Red Army's political education materials. It also appeared in radio broadcasts and propaganda posters that encouraged soldiers to emulate Zaitsev's patience and precision. The image of Zaitsev became central to Soviet wartime propaganda. He was awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union on February 22, 1943, shortly after the final German surrender at Stalingrad. The citation referenced his confirmed kills and leadership in training other snipers, but made no specific mention of König. Nevertheless, by that time, the duel had already entered the Soviet wartime lexicon as a verified event. Soviet journalists and propagandists used it to illustrate the effectiveness of Soviet sniper doctrine, which had become an integral part of Red Army tactics. The duel story was also used to emphasize the moral superiority of Soviet soldiers, depicting the German officer as an arrogant invader whose defeat symbolized the collapse of Nazi confidence at Stalingrad. In the post-war years, the legend of the Zaitsev-König duel was incorporated into Soviet military history and educational materials. Zaitsev's memoir, Notes of a Sniper, published in 1956, gave a detailed account of the duel consistent with earlier reports. The memoir presented the event as factual, describing König as the head of a sniper school in Berlin and emphasizing the 3-day duration of the engagement. The Soviet Ministry of Defense endorsed Zaitsev's memoirs, and they were widely distributed to military academies and sniper training institutions during the 1950s and 1960s. During the Cold War, the story of Zaitsev was used in Soviet media to reinforce the image of the Red Army as an institution that combined technical skill with ideological commitment. In literature, newsreels, and later film, Zaitsev's duel was portrayed as an allegory for the broader ideological conflict between socialism and fascism. Soviet military journals in the 1960s published analytical articles on sniper tactics that referenced Stalingrad as the birthplace of modern urban sniper warfare, frequently mentioning Zaitsev as a case study. The duel narrative thus served both pedagogical and symbolic functions. It was used to teach marksmanship principles and to celebrate Soviet endurance in one of the most decisive battles of the war. Outside the Soviet Union, Western historians began to examine the duel story in more detail beginning in the 1970s. With the gradual opening of Soviet archives and the publication of memoirs from both sides, researchers attempted to determine whether a German officer named Erwin König, or possibly Heinz Thorwald, ever existed. No verifiable German records were found that corresponded to the details of the Soviet version. The Wehrmacht's personnel files from sniper schools, such as the Zossen and Doberitz institutions near Berlin, contain no reference to an officer by either name. Post-war German veterans interviewed by military historians in the 1980s did not recall any instance of a high-ranking sniper being sent to Stalingrad to hunt an individual Soviet marksman. The absence of documentary evidence has led most modern historians to conclude that the duel was either a heavily embellished account or an entirely fictional creation of Soviet propaganda. Antony Beevor, in his book Stalingrad, 1998, concluded that the duel was a carefully constructed legend, likely based on smaller-scale sniper encounters that were common during the battle. Other researchers, such as German historian Thomas Urban, have pointed out that the story follows a clear propagandistic pattern used frequently in Soviet wartime media. A skilled, humble Soviet soldier defeating a technically superior enemy expert. These narratives were intended to reinforce morale and demonstrate the reliability of Soviet tactics and ideology. However, not all historians dismiss the duel outright. Some, including Russian military researchers, argue that the lack of German records does not necessarily disprove the event. The chaotic conditions of the Stalingrad battle, the destruction of many German archives, and the high officer casualty rates could explain the absence of official documentation. Zaitsev's consistent description of the event in multiple interviews has also led some analysts to treat it as a possible real encounter that was exaggerated in detail, but not invented. Russian military museums including the Battle of Stalingrad Panorama Museum in Volgograd, continue to reference the duel as a historical episode, and Zaitsev's personal rifle remains on display there. Beyond the debate about its authenticity, the Zaitsev duel had a lasting influence on the development of sniper warfare doctrines. During the remainder of the war and in the post-war years, the Soviet military incorporated lessons from Stalingrad into its sniper training programs. The emphasis on camouflage, endurance, and independent decision-making became standard features of Soviet and later Warsaw Pact sniper instruction. The duel's narrative reinforced the concept of the sniper as a psychological weapon capable of influencing morale and command efficiency, not merely as a tactical shooter. The cultural impact of the duel extended into Soviet and later Russian popular culture. In the decades following the war, the story appeared in military anthologies, novels, and documentaries. During the 1980s, when Soviet media began re-examining World War II history with greater transparency, the duel continued to be cited as a key example of individual heroism at Stalingrad. Even after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the story retained symbolic significance. Russian publications in the 1990s and 2000s reprinted Zaitsev's memoirs and produced documentaries revisiting the controversy over König's existence. While historians increasingly questioned the veracity of the event, Russian public opinion generally continued to regard it as authentic, viewing it as a legitimate part of national wartime heritage. Internationally, the duel gained renewed attention with the release of the 2001 film Enemy at the Gates, which dramatized the confrontation between Zaitsev and König. The film's portrayal, while largely fictionalized, reintroduced the event to global audiences and cemented its place in popular representations of sniper warfare. Although the film introduced numerous historical inaccuracies, such as romantic subplots and a stylized depiction of Stalingrad, it drew loosely from Soviet wartime accounts and reinforced Zaitsev's association with the concept of the sniper duel. The film's success revived interest in archival research and led to further academic publications reassessing the story's origins. From a military perspective, the legacy of the Stalingrad sniper experience extended beyond the individual legend of Zaitsev. The Red Army's use of snipers during the battle influenced not only Soviet doctrine, but also Western and NATO sniper programs after the war. Military analysts studying urban combat cited Stalingrad as the first large-scale demonstration of sniper integration within infantry operations. The tactics developed there, use of camouflage, pair-based operation, overlapping fields of fire, and counter-sniper coordination, became foundational principles in Cold War-era sniper training manuals. Zaitsev's methods, documented in Soviet field manuals from the late 1940s, were incorporated into training in Warsaw Pact armies and studied by Western military observers. The historiographical debate surrounding the duel also reflects broader trends in the study of World War II. As access to archival materials expanded after the 1990s, historians began distinguishing between documented events and wartime mythologies that served political or psychological purposes. The Zaitsev duel became a prominent example of how propaganda could transform an individual engagement into a symbol of national identity. For Soviet historians, the story validated the moral superiority of the Red Army. For modern researchers, it illustrates how wartime narratives are constructed, transmitted, and sustained, even in the absence of evidence. In assessing the duel's legacy, it is clear that its influence lies not only in whether it happened, but in how it was remembered and utilized. The legend of Zaitsev and König encapsulated key themes of the Eastern Front: endurance, skill, and ideological struggle. It reinforced the image of the Soviet sniper as both a tactical asset and a cultural icon. Through its repetition in official histories, films, and military instruction, the story became detached from verification and entered the realm of collective memory. Today, the duel remains a subject of analysis in military history programs and museums. In Volgograd, exhibits continue to present Zaitsev as a historical figure whose actions at Stalingrad exemplified Soviet sniper doctrine. The Russian armed forces still reference his name in sniper competitions and training materials. Western historians continue to cite the case as a cautionary example of the intersection between fact and wartime myth. The duel's persistence in historical discourse demonstrates how certain wartime narratives achieve permanence through repetition, symbolism, and the lack of conclusive evidence to either confirm or deny them. In conclusion, the legacy of the Stalingrad duel lies in its dual character as both a historical claim and a cultural construction. Whether or not Major Erwin König existed, the story achieved the purpose for which it was created: to embody Soviet resilience, demonstrate the tactical effectiveness of sniper warfare, and provide a human face to one of the most destructive battles of the Second World War. Its continuing discussion among historians and its representation in global media reflect the enduring impact of the narratives that emerged from Stalingrad, where individual marksmanship, psychological endurance, and propaganda converged to shape the modern understanding of the sniper's role in warfare.